So let's go ahead and continue. Now, if everything worked perfectly well, what do we want to do? Firstly, let's go ahead and console logged in. Okay, so that means a user is logged in, right? And after that, we still want to do something. Let's go ahead and set auth token to what? Data. Okay, so I know you might be a little bit confused by this. Let me explain. Remember when we saved the auth token over here, and this auth token thing, I don't know, you're gonna find it a little bit I don't know, you're gonna find it a little bit confusing if you don't have any experience with React. You're gonna find it confusing because this over here is a variable. This over here is one that helps us set what we want in the state. So this set auth token here now, what we simply must do is we said, hey, in the auth token we want to send data. And remember, this data is what we grabbed from over here that the user logged in, which is what? The username and the password. Or instead of even saying username and password, I will say this data is the access token. This one over here. This one. I'm going to try logging in again. That's this one. So these are the things that we are grabbing. So we want to grab this refresh and access token and we want to store it in the set auth token. And remember, once we store it in the set auth token, it automatically gets stored in the local storage. Okay, hopefully you understand. So now we do this. So what we can even say that we are doing here now is pretty much setting the data to the local storage. Hopefully you understand. But if you don't understand, just drop a comment and I'll go ahead and explain more. Okay, so we've done this. That was the first thing. And also remember, we also have this one over here called set user. So we also still need to go ahead and set the user data. Okay, remember this one, we just set the access and refresh token to the local storage. This one over here, we need to set the user data like their, I don't know, you could pass in their email or their ID, whatever you want to pass in. We also need to set that in the local storage. So how do we do that? Just over here, I'm going to say set user. I'm going to say set user. And what we want to pass into the set user, take note, we're going to pass JWT underscore the code. See, if we pass in the data, if we just pass in the raw data in here, that means in the set user, it's just going to pass in that raw data, that raw key, refresh and the access token. But firstly, what we want to do is go ahead and decode it. And instead of decoding, what we even want to grab is the access over here. Okay, we want to grab the access token over here because access token is the one that's going to help us, check for things like when a user is authenticated to run things like that. That's why I want to grab the access token. The refresh one is used to get a new token, a new access token. Hopefully you understand. So we're going to say JWT decode, and in the JWT decode, what do we want to pass in? We could pass in data. But if we just pass in data like that, that means we are setting this to, and what we want to set is only the access. So if you're following along, then you know that we need to pass in data.access so that we also grab just access instead of the refresh and access. If we leave out the access, then we're passing in the two. If we stick the access in there, then we are grabbing only the access. Okay, hopefully you understand. And after that's done, I think let's just go ahead and set the local storage now. So I'm gonna say local storage. Finally, now we're gonna go ahead and set item. Right now, what we are trying to do now is go ahead and set the refresh and the access to the local storage. So now we set the refresh and the access to the local storage. Whenever this function over here is run, it tries getting that refresh and access token from here, auth token. And don't worry, you guys are gonna understand something now. I know you might be like, this auth token, can I name it anything or should I name it just auth token? Don't worry, you can name it anything you want, but before you name it anything you want, you want to make sure that whatever you name here, auth tokens, is what you are naming there. So I'm going to grab this and paste it in here. So if what you have here is bananas or milkshake or Shakespeare, then you want to make sure that whenever you're doing local storage, the item what you're getting is banana or milkshake or Shakespeare. Okay, hopefully you understand. So when we've done that, the first argument that the set item takes is what you want to call the, let's just say what you want to call the data in the local storage. The next argument that it takes is the actual value that you want to set in the local storage. So this time around, we want to set the what? The data. I told you that the data is getting the refresh and the access token. Now we set the refresh and the access token to the local storage. As simple as that. Then remember from the beginning, I told you that we're going to be storing user on the front end. Local storage is also the front end. So that's where we are storing user. Hopefully you understand everything that's going on. We are almost coming to an end. Okay. So now a user is logged in. Let's just go ahead and say something like history.push, and let's push them to the home page, or you can push to whatever page you want to push to, dashboard or whatever. But I'm gonna stick with the home page for now. So whenever we just push to this slash, then a user logged in, it's gonna push them back to the home page, which is this one over here. Now we're still gonna change up all that. So after you've done this, over here, let's just say else. So if for any reason there is an error, firstly, what I want to do is let's go ahead and console log the response. I'm going to console log the response.status, and I'm also going to console log, let's just say there was an issue. There was, let's say, a server issue. Okay. And aside that, I'm also going to say I'm also going to alert. Let's say we want to alert something went wrong. Okay, something went wrong, and alongside the something went wrong, let's also pass in the response.status. So I'm going to say pass in the response.status. Okay, so we actually have a descriptive information of what's going on. So yeah, I think we are pretty much done with this. Let's go ahead and work with the register right now. So for the register, let's make sure actually that everything looks okay. Okay, so far we've finished the login function. Now let's go ahead and start working with creating the register function. So I'm going to say const register. You can call it register user, or you can call it whatever you want. You know, it's a function, so you pass in whatever name you want for a function. So just like we did over here at the top, when we want to do the fetch thing, we have to use the async and await. So over here also we need to pass in async, and just like that. And over here, we need to pass in the parameters that we're going to be needing. So remember how I told you why we needed the email and the password? Because it's login, we need the email and password. And that's the same thing you want to do for the register. But instead of just passing in things randomly here, what you want to do is just open up your, you could open up your serializer. Yeah, you could open up your serializers py. And for the register serializer, you can see that we require the email, the username, the password, and the password too. So those are the things that you want to pass in here: the email, the username, the password, and the password too. So let's say you're trying to build I don't know, let's say a more complex application, and you don't just want to have only the username, email, password 1, password 2, but you want to have things like the first name, the second name, and other kind of stuff. Then all you need to do is just go ahead and extend it in your Django model, add those fields in your Django model, your Django user model, then make sure to add them in your serializers py, and over here you can be able to use them. As simple as that. So as you all know, this is an arrow function, so we're going to add in the arrow over them. And let's start off with what we've done before. I'm going to say const response, and this should be equal to await. And as you all know, we're going to be using the JavaScript good old fetch method, and we need to pass in the register route over here. So let's go ahead and look for the register route in my browser. Remember, this is what we have been using. So I'm going to come over to API/register, not register to or register one. I'm just come over to register. So with this now, as you can see, that's not working. So it's register / okay. So I think it should be register / and there you go. That's it. This is working perfectly well. So it requires the email, username, password, and password too. So if I fill this in now and hit the post, as you can see, it's going to go ahead. It says password field doesn't match. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my password, testing 321, and I'm also going to put in my password, testing 321, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the post. Okay, this should go ahead and create an account for us. As you can see, account was created successfully, and it returns the email and also returns the username. So this is perfect. Now let's go ahead and work with the function over here. So what you want to do is copy this and paste it in here. So let's say you've hosted this API on, let's say, Railway or some other places. Then you want to copy www.yourapplicationName.com/railway/API/register and paste it in here instead of this localhost. But what we are doing now is kind of, I don't know, this doesn't really make any sense. We're supposed to be extending this, let's say, from an env file or whatever. But you know, you could just go ahead and do that if you know you're trying to build a real application or something. Okay, so I think that's pretty much what we need to do. I'm going to open this up, and as usual, we should go ahead and pass in the method. Remember, the method that we passed in for the last one was post, just like this over here. Remember, and we also need to go ahead and pass in the headers. And for the header, remember what I told you, we're going to use content type JSON. So for the header, just open this up, and over here I'm gonna say content dash type, and I'm gonna say application JSON. So application slash JSON. Now you can go ahead and copy from over here and paste it if that's okay by you, but I don't want to copy so you guys actually understand everything that's going on. And also for the body, we're gonna say body, and remember how we did it. We say JSON.stringify because we try to pass this back to the API. And for that, we're gonna pass in a couple of things: the email, the username, the password, and the password too. So all this email, username, password too, we are grabbing them from over here. If for any reason one of this doesn't exist, then definitely, as you can see, this now shows an underline under, which means that there is a problem. It says couldn't find name password. Did you mean password too? As you can see, but no, that's not what we mean. We're gonna bring that back. So hopefully you understand. Now after we've done this, just below here, below the const, we need to go ahead and do the same thing that we do. We need to check if response, remember the response thing. So we're going to say if response the status is equal to 201. So where are we checking if response status is equal to 201? Remember that we created a user over here. Now instead of returning the response 200, what you notice, it returns 201. So the response status 201 means created. The 200 means okay, like everything's good. So we want to check if response status 201, that means a user was actually created. Then what do we want to do? Let's go ahead and push them to the login page so they're gonna log in. But if you want to do something like automatically log the user in, then I think that's something that needs, you know, more steps that you'd want to implement. But if you want to see that, I don't mind adding it into the tutorial, just to make sure to drop a comment in the comment section below and let me know if you need that. Okay, so yeah, after we've done this, we could just go ahead and say else, and where should we return them to? Let's just alert something went wrong. Okay, so I'm just gonna come over here. I'm gonna copy all this that I wrote out initially, and I'm gonna paste it down here. And yeah, something went wrong. Then we console log the response, the status, and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and create the function to log out a user. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna say const, and let's call it logout user. Okay, that's supposed to be together. So I'm gonna say const logout user, and you already know for this one we don't need to pass in any parameter. I know you might be thinking, should you pass in the username and the password parameter and, you know, remove them from the session or what? Maybe that's what you've been asking, I don't know. But what we're gonna do is simply go ahead and remove everything that's in the local storage. As soon as the local storage gets cleared, or as soon as the auth token gets cleared from the local storage, a user would automatically be logged out. Okay, so what we simply need to do is go ahead and say set auth tokens. Remember, this time around we set it to null, which means we clear everything in the auth tokens. And also what we want to do, we're going to say set user, and we want to also set user to null. And what else do we want to do? We're going to go ahead and say local storage dot remove item. So we say local storage dot remove item, and what do we want to remove? We want to go ahead and remove the auth tokens, this one over here. So I'm just going to get down and do this. So right now we are pretty much killing any session that, you know, that's already exists. So I'm just gonna say history dot push, and with that, like, you know, redirect. So we simply want to redirect them to the login page when all this happens. And I think that's pretty much it. We can go ahead and alert you logged out or something. I'm going to be showing you guys how to use Sweet Alerts maybe in this video or maybe in the next one, but definitely I'm going to show you guys how to use Sweet Alerts to, you know, make all these things look good. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the logout user. Now let's go ahead and create the context data. So the context data is pretty much something that's going to help us access all these functions that we've created outside of the auth context file. So what we simply need to do is go ahead and define a new variable, and I'm going to call this one const, and let's just say something like context data. Okay, I think, yeah, context data should be okay. Then in here we just need to go ahead and pass in all that functions that we've created. You can say user, you can say set user, and let me just duplicate this and start changing them up. And I'm also going to say auth tokens, and over here set auth tokens. And which one again do we have? We also have register user, we also have register user, we also have login user, and finally we have log out user. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And one more thing that we need to do is just down here, what we want to do is let's use effect hook to check if there is actually an auth token. So if there is an auth token, we want to decode the auth token dot access immediately, and we're gonna pass it inside something that's called auth context, or we're pretty much going to go ahead and pass in the context data inside the auth context dot provider. Don't worry if you don't understand, let's just go ahead and do this now. Okay, so what I want to do is just say use effect, not user effect, but use effect like this. And just in here, this is going to be a function, and what I just want to do is go ahead and check for if auth tokens. So if auth tokens, that means, yeah, that means actually a user exists, right? What we want to do is just go ahead and do set user, and I'm simply going to set user to JWT the code, JWT the code. Then what do we want to decode? We want to decode auth tokens dot what access. Okay, so hopefully you already know the refresh and access thing that we did before. Yeah, that's it. And what else should we even do here? Let's go ahead and set loading. Let's set loading to false. And okay, hopefully you already know, or maybe I don't know if you have much knowledge about React, but there is what's called dependency array. So if for any reason we don't pass anything into the dependency array, this would run forever. Okay, so we need to give this a reason for it to run. So for any time the auth tokens change, we want to go ahead and run this. Okay, either we remove the auth token or we add them to the local storage. That's when we want to remove this. We don't want to keep running it immediately we spin up our application and forever. Okay, hopefully you understand. So I'm just going to pass in auth tokens and loading, which means whenever there is an auth token or there's not an auth token, or we mess around with auth token, this over here, this that we wrote is going to go ahead and get triggered. And whenever the loading changes maybe to true or false, this also is going to go ahead and get triggered. So yeah, that's what we're doing. Now finally, let's go ahead and return. So this is a function. Hopefully you know this is one big function, and a function must return something. Hopefully you know, even if it's null or 1 or 2 or 3 or hello, a function must return something. But what we want to return in this function, okay, what we want to return is this. I'm gonna say auth context. So this auth context over here, let me get to the top. So this auth context is pretty much this one over here, this one that we created. Now, just because we have extended from the create context, then we're gonna have access to let's call it a method that's gonna be called provider. Okay, so auth context dot provider. Now, what do we want to pass in as value to the provider? Value. I think this should be like this. Hopefully, I'm not making a mistake. Okay, yeah, I think that's because I need to close this off. So I need to say something like, okay, yeah, that was my issue. That was my problem. I need to come over here and close this off by saying auth context dot provider. Okay, and let's see one. Okay, there seems to be an issue. Let's take a close look at what's going on over here. We return auth context dot provider. That will pass the value should be this. The value should be the crate. Should it be the, no, not the crate context, but instead the context data. Okay, the context data. And let's see. In here, we're supposed to go ahead and pass in loading. No. Else we pass in the children. Don't worry, I'll explain what's going on. Else we pass in the children prop that we passed in there. So let's see, why is this not working out? Let's take a close look at this. Okay, one thing that I'm going to do before we go ahead and change this off, I'm just going to comment this out. Don't worry, I'm going to do it later. Let's just go ahead and look for a fix for this, and let's see what's going on. Oh, yeah. Okay, I think I kind of found something. Return is supposed to be parentheses and not this. Okay, so I'm gonna put this down here. Could that be it? Yeah, that's it. So it's working perfectly well. Now let's go ahead and explain what's going on here. Remember, all this is a big function called auth provider, right? Now, remember we exported this auth context over here that we inherited from the create context. And remember what we said the create context was, it's like a store that we can use to keep track of things that are happening in our site or in our function or application. Okay, so now we say the auth context because we've extended from the create, this one over here, from the create context. That means we should have access to something called a provider. Okay, so if we come over here, then you can see that we have this provider over here. Right now what I'm just doing is just inspecting the application. Okay, this is not this index ds.ts, so this is not real application, but we now have access to use this provider keyword over here, and we simply say the value should be equal to the context data, which is this one over here, this context data. And one thing, let's make this context data a lowercase. Okay, so I'm gonna make context data, and also this should be context data. Now what we simply said is this: if loading, which means something is still loading, or a user is still trying to log in, we haven't actually added everything to the to the local storage, then still leave the provider or the auth context provider as null. But when a user is logged in, passing children. So what does this children mean? It pretty much means everything that we have done in here. Okay, you see this children, everything that we've done in here, we pretty much go ahead and pass it into the auth context provider. I know it sounds kind of like gibberish, yeah, but don't worry, with time you're gonna understand how all this works. Okay, the more you get the more you get more experience in React and all that, then everything is gonna start making sense to you. So this video is or might have gotten pretty long. I think that's gonna be it for this one. In the next one, we should go ahead and start working with something new. I don't know, maybe we could just go ahead and start working with the creating a folder maybe called utils in the source folder and working with use Axios. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and run through this code one last time for in case you don't understand. So what we're basically doing is creating an auth context, and we'll be able to import it into any of the file that's present in the source folder. Okay, then we'll be able to access the context data, this one that we created over here. We're going to be able to access this context data that we created over here using the auth context that we created, this one over here. That's why we passed it in here. Okay, so hopefully you understand. So that's why we basically wrapped everything in this auth context over here, or you can just say it's auth provider, this one. That's why we just wrapped everything in. Then after that, we simply created the login function, the register, the logout, and passed in everything into this create context that we then passed into all the files that's in the source folder. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I know you might find some things difficult to understand, but don't worry, with time you're gonna understand. And if for any reason you don't understand anything, just drop a comment in the comment section below and I'll do my possible best to reply. Okay, so yeah, that's gonna be it. Do make sure to check out my channel, drop a like, consider subscribing as it really means the world to me, and also drop a like on this video, drop a comment, and yeah, that's gonna be it. Until the next video, mad love, peace out.